Hello everyone, my name is Beryl Vane Sangitlao, and today I'm going to talk about the Mizoram-Assam border role, the what, the why, and the how. The topic we're going to talk today is certainly one of the most important subjects to people of India in general, and more so for people of Mizoram and Assam in particular in recent years and for generations to come for the Northeast Indians. Let us try to understand the details of today's subject best from a layman's perspective. So you may ask, who are the Mizos? In short, by Mizo, we mean to include the hill tribes in the northeast India, predominantly in the state of Mizoram and its adjacent states of India, as well as those in the neighboring hill areas of Myanmar and Bangladesh. And again, in short, the tribe is known as Mizo in India, Chin in Myanmar, and Kuki in Bangladesh, whereas Mi, M-I means people, and Zo, Z-O means highlands. Therefore, the word Mizo would literally mean Highlander. What we call Zonatak is basically a larger Mizo family which consists of many of the Mizo tribes or clans, each one having their own dialect, out of which Lusei, or sometimes called Dulian, is being used more or less as a common language or lingua franca by all the tribes belonging to the Mizo family. All dialects of Mizo are linguistically classed as a family of Sino-Tibeto-Burman, and anthropologically we are a family belonging to Mongoloid stock. Our forefathers had passed through many trying times and ages in the course of settling down in the present areas more or less surrounding to the present Indian state of Mizoram. We must be truly grateful to Almighty God that He had brought His people to this region, which is classified otherwise seismically as Zone 5, the most active zone in the world, yet there has been no record of a major earthquake in the state till date with any major casualty. So, the settlement of Mizos in an area surrounding the present state of Mizoram is not by chance, but by the clear choice and divine guidance, the same God who had promised a land to the Israelites too. Let us remember that the Israelites did not get their present land too easily. In the same manner, we, the Mizos, cannot be complacent in our fight to get our own Mizoram, the land of the Mizos. Mizo community being semi-nomadic in nature, the Mizos had been in fact spreading all over the chain hills of Myanmar and Chittagong hills of Bangladesh, and as well as hilly region of Tripura, Meghalaya, Assam and Manipur states bordering the state of Mizoram in India. In the process, it is important to note that we, Mizos, were the original settlers, indigenous people for all practical purposes, and hence our present Mizoram is a land gifted to us by Almighty and not a snatched away land from anybody else indeed. As such, even today, the Mizos, in spite of spreading out in 3 neighboring countries, we have been maintaining a very close, warm and high level of socio-cultural bondage in spite of all odds. Though the Britishers did apply their very own famous divide and rule policy for the ease of their administration, these blooded brothers and sisters of ours have been stepping up their brotherhood in course of times. This desire to be in touch and be together always is more evident in the present scenario of handling the Mizoram-Assam border this time around. So let me talk about pre-British India period. Prior to the onslaught of the Britishers till the mid-1800s, Mizos were maintaining their own identity by having their own small kingdoms in the form of all-powerful village chiefs as per their natural convenience of topography and the charms of each hill ranges.
लगभग सन 1800 के प्रारंभ में अंग्रेज कई मिजो जनजाति के संपर्क में आए जो अंग्रेज बर्मा से आए, बर्मा जो कि अब के म्यांमार है, वहां से जो होकर के अंग्रेज आए थे उन्होंने मिजो जनजाति को चीन नाम से पुकारा, और उसी प्रकार बांग्लादेश से होकर के जो आए थे उन अंग्रेजों ने हमें कुकी कहकर के पुकारा, और असम से होकर के जो आए थे उन अंग्रेजों ने हमें मिजो कहा। इस तरह अलग अलग दिशा से आने वाले अंग्रेजों ने हमें अलग अलग नाम दिए। शायद यही कारण था उन दिनों में क्या होता था कि भाई भाई, मिजो भाई भाई के बीच भी लड़ाइयां होती थी। और तो और मैं कहना चाहूंगी, जैसे हम सब जानते हैं अंग्रेज जो है वैसे भी हमेशा डिवाइड एंड रूल पॉलिसी अपनाते थे, और इसी के जरिए क्या है अपना हक जमाने की ताक में रहता तो था ही। और सन 1850 के दौरान अंग्रेजों के साथ मिजो जनजाति का परिचय जो है बढ़ने लगा था। वैसे मिजो जनजातियों के मन में अंग्रेजों के प्रति स्वागत की भावना जो थी बिल्कुल भी नहीं थी, और क्या है, असम के चाय बागान में अंग्रेजों का आना जाना मिजो मुखियों को बिल्कुल भी पसंद नहीं था। उनके शिकार के क्षेत्र में गोरे रंग के आदमी का टहलना मिजो मुखिया के बर्दाश्त के बाहर था और इसी के चलते क्या होता है, एक बहुत ही भयंकर घटना घटी। साइलाम गांव के मिजो मुखिया ने विंचेस्टर के पिताजी की हत्या कर डाला और तो और क्या है, उनकी बेटी को भी बंदी बनाई गई। इस तरह अपने क्षेत्र की हिफाजत के लिए क्या है, मिजो मुखिया जो है इस हद तक जा सकता था। अब क्या होता है, अंग्रेज भी इस पहचान में आ गए थे कि मिजो अपने दुश्मन के प्रति काफी बेरहम होते हैं, वे अपनी जान जोखिम में डालना नहीं चाहते थे। और इतना ही नहीं, मिजो क्षेत्र में क्या है, अंग्रेजों के हित के कीमती संसाधन जैसे कि चाय, तेल, तीख, इन सब के अभाव के कारण क्या है, अंग्रेजों ने मिजो जनजाति से दूर ही रहना उचित समझा और ठीक समझा।
चुचु तुना कन सेताक बर इनर लाइन रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट लो छुना ले खुलाया इनर लाइन कनिन पोदना तुर खुलमा कंजुकल मारलम जेल कंजुकल तोगना तुर खुलाय थन कंजुकल थे तुर खा अन लो सीएम लो ने चुचु अतिर चुआन कन खे तुर चु इनर लाइन रिजर्व ति ही कचार लमा चंगा सीएम अनि ति खा कन खे दा पोइमो ता चुआन बाउंड्री पोस्ट खा सोमली पसरे वेलाय अन सीएम ने चुचु तुना चंगा कन सोइदु कन सोइ चेंदो चु खति हुन खा खमी बा खचु असम ने कन रि नहीं बाउंड्री पिलर मुमल तक सीएम ओम लो तिया ngai ani chuan kan sei tong khan British ho khan Mizoram in mangai wangte le min du sak ema wanga India ram rong kalani lawa sumdong ri ru pu rong kalani wang khan an thingpui huan expansion an thingpui huan ti changthun zel na atan khan an ram mamong khan kan inner line po khan on sang kol tho zel ani ti kha kan theda poimwa chuan sang kha zakwa somthuma te antia somthum pathuma te han siam thalea tuna kan sei lar le tak ber chu sang khazire somsari panga Ramri fel tak khama Mizoram le British India khati hunlaya British hoina ram an khamba khachu draw mumal survey mumal khamumal omlo ti kan seya sang khazu ko somthum pathum khan British India khan mumal takin ram an kham thale tane chuta chon kan fiat tu chu sang khazu ko somthum pathum borvela khan British ho khan India ram khachu asan an tumtran to ni ta chon India independent boro om to ti kan fiat poimwa khada tak khan a Indian ang le Assam ang khan phurna an lo nei temela plan thui tak adam khoi tu tan an lo nei nin alanga sanghas ko somthum pathum po kha Ramri mumal om si lovin inner line reserve kha an lo son kol velani ti kha chianga tin tuna hemi level ka soidu chu Assam le Mizoram kanin Ramri nei hi atir chuan 1875 fa chuan an mani ka chalama tanga an inner line Mizoram lama tanga kan outer line ve kha in Ramri na min mantira annuwa chuan khami ngani Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act anti 1873 ni 1875 notified kha khami mang khan inner line reserve forest ti khan siam tani chu khami inner line reserve forest kha 1878 vel an siama khan thil chiang poimo em tir tan she tur chu khami inner line reserve forest 509 square miles sakha Mizoram mani ti kha kan pum poimo tuna hian kan she tur chu hemi British hun lai dei to Assam borvelina Assam sarkarina asoi azia chuan 1876 le 77 an form 46 kan en chuan form 46 a khan Assam ram chunga reserve forest le unclass forest lisan siama ta chuan inner line reserve forest 5092 it is in the territory of Lusai Hills tine chu wangin 1879-78 vel khami inner line reserve an siam tantir po khan Mizoram Lusai territory omaniti an pom chho chara chuan sangkha zakwa panga tanga sangkha zakwa sominkara po inner line reserve forest atanga an chela khom kumma chunga chela khom kha nuai khat sangsari zali somsari pasari le anakhat ani chupo chu Mizoram Lusai Hills Superintendent hena anan pengeni chumi chu inner line reserve kha chiang taka Mizoram ta ni ti confirm le tu chu sangkha zakua songwa le pathum October ni thum khan Assam sarkarin Mizoram sarkar he na hei Mizoram chung omani ti apam thu aran soileni chu wangin he ta 1875 fatanga an soi chau char chara khan 1933 May nilo khami pel chau ton 1953 ti chawate po khan Assamin Mizoram omani ti an pomje kan chiang ani chu wangin tuna hian 509 kan soi hian Assam ta kan zuk chu ni lovin atiratang reng khan Mizoram ngoi ni ti kha kan khet thiam poi mo ta ni chu da tak chuan hemi kan mi puite nei lo en tura in lo mu thei tura tanga kan soi le kai du chu I British hovina map min siam saka kha all sam timela chiang vak lovin kan on tilang to a chu min huwa chuan I form 46 Assamina reserve forest le unclassed forest ane hotel lisa 509 in line reserve forest ante chu Mizoram Lusai territory omani kan chiang le to a tin lekha pokhan 3rd October 1953 Assam sarkar ina ron thon na kan nei le boka tin chi an pek na kan nei kan ti kha chumin nuwa chuan makdeu maklong rang dewin 1972 kan uti atang khan hemi tuna Assamina kan 509 in line reserve min lua sakmek te kha anta nei zui ve taringut meni chulai taka chu tuna kan boina pakhat ni ti kha kan seiduwa tuna hian alan dan chuan Ministry of Environment Forest atanga alan dan chuan reserve forest sang map and draw na tuna slide pakhata mi ron langa kha reserve forest in line reserve forest map anita khami kha 509 angin an la maintain chara 509 square miles anga zaw alani ta chuan 509 square miles sa chuan 220 kha Mizorama nin 289 kha Assam anom tir to tani amaro chu vainia kan chen tur chu Mizo te phalna lovin emo Mizo te hretpui na lovin atira 509 Mizoram ang chau char kha khoya kha nge engwangin nge Assamin 280 square miles kha lo nei veringo ti kha kan thelawa kan lungoi thelo ne chu wangin tu na po hian Assamina antikhai dan ber an soidan tlang pui ber chu official an niamo political bosses an niamo public leader an niamo khang hobina an soidan chuan Nagaland and chuan Assam chum problem an nei ma se Mizoram nen kan nei lo an titlat me ni chu wang kenin kan ram dik tak kan la lu lova kan ram dik tak kan la ho fulo kan hriat lai khan Assam chuan we have no problem with Mizoram an titlat ane ti kha kan hriat podanga ya chu wang tun tuma kan Ramri Buai hian Mizo te hian Assam hovina constitutional boundary anon ti ve chen atan tira tun tuma phe chuan Karimganj DC tuna an tham nei na te hi Assam Singla Valley Singla Forest Reserve ania chu wangin tiaron maron lakna kha DC khan constitutional boundary aron se kha Mizo ten kan pom velova Mizo te hret puina ni loti kha an hrevetan to chu po chu tuna kan boina hian masonat ani ti kha kan sei lok du ni tuna karon sei tong khan October 30 lama Karimganj DC na constitutional boundary chunga he thlami sakania Mizo ten lawan ne ya tia portaka in la gang leader vede wa aron kala aron halten ron ti cheda kha kan hret tur chu I survey of India map hi Mizoram le Assam inkara hi to posit somli le pasari in androa chu to posit somli le pasari a chuan Assam le Mizoram inkar big lai hi to posit paruk an mangani chung to posit chu hei tu na hianin ka khela hin kan ne ya atira 1971 Northeast Areas Reorganization Act manga Mizoram UTL ni don khan Survey of India ho hian khami 1971 Northeast Reorganization Act phang khan khami hisab khan map and draw veni chuan ka sai to khan Assam le Mizoram inkara khan kan border kha to posit parukin and draw chui paruk te jinga pakhat chu hei hi ni ta 83D8 ane helai map oma hi ni ta ni chuan khata khan 1971-72 a map khan ronghal charchara chu an han update 74-75 ti borvela khan an publish tani chumi an food nota chuan kan hriat tura chu Mizoram le Assam inkara survey anti khan survey of India khan rilu thatak dik takin helai Ramri kan road ate hian Assam Mizoram sarkar rona ni lo ground verification omlo ti te kha an sia thlap thlapani chumi an sia thlap thlapa chu tuna slide karan tim karan mua chu khan alanga 83 ami hemi kati angeni 83D by 8 hian 1971-72 atanga andro to 1982 75-76 vel unpublished chuan helai footnote hian ground verifications not yet carried out ti anjekani ma se tuna hemi map karon ken chota ka hi chuan hi 1971-72 map bring thosi in 2004-2005 khan survey of India hian anlo update velani chumi an update na chuan khalai ground verifications not yet carried out antikha an paitani hemi D8 big topposite hian chu han ngai to chuan helai borvel hi mania Karimganj hovina Karimganj hone ken rin lai borvel ania Karimganj han DC na pordeva hi constitutional boundary chungani aron tika engwanga tinge niang 1971-72 an surveyor verified lawakha 2004-5 an update khan unverified ta nge Mizoram sarkar kan lopom ta nge Assam khan kan pumle pomlo pongai to lawin verified antia footnote mi kha antibota tin alangai theta ni chu wang tak chuan Karimganj changa boiner in tan tun tum tang rin tan kha helai hian trick thingdeu hai aniam tikha kan ngai to chen ngai ta ni chu wang tu na hi chuan helai hianin engai ni khami yet to be verified tikha 2004-5 anon update hai chun abota ni tikha kan sei du phoda kan kheda ta na poimwa chu wang sang khazire somsari panga tanga voini thang hian British Indian yamo Assam sarkar ni mo khan kan khen ngai melo kan minron ve ngai melo khan kan boundary hen lo siam chom mir ko meni chu kan lung oilo ni chu wang Assam ina an sei constitutional boundary ti kha kan chon no constitutional boundary kan la nei velova constitutional boundary kan nei velova wangin Assam ram kan lut nge lu lo ti hi achiang lawa chu wang constitutional boundary kan nei ma lo chu helai ram Buai hen umje nei lo ni ti kha kan than na tur ni ta ni tuna karon soi zok kha ti chiang turin hi helai map hi to pasit 83D11 83D8 D7 amtani hi 1971-72 Northeast Areas Reorganization Act manga an map draw khani tani tuna karon soi khami Karimganj borvel kha 83D8 and here just second edition in 1981 at India. That's one thing is footnote that's one. The interstate boundaries between Assam-Mizoram and Tripura states shown on this map are as interpreted from the Northeast Areas Reorganization Act 1971. Country to na constitutional map kantiam official map country hawi Assam bika Northeast at one 1971 base draw. The Northeast Areas Reorganization Act 1971 best draw ni the country poimo he me big he kesen khan 1971-72 nuan produce niya 81 an ziada na chuan khamian je nuwa khan funo but have yet to be verified hi a omkalani hemi omkala hi helai hi tuna chuan 83D8 hemi bihla milai big te hemi to proceed 83D he and the chimical lianita a footnote that can have yet to be verified tika ta hen om vet alone chu ni tuna koron se boilai chu aom lo chen kha Mizoram sarkar hen Mizoram sarkar nen rolin allo verify to nge verify chong si lewin Assam khan allo omti lo veringot tika apoi mo chu wang voine kan khle tur chu Assam ho hian an du danin min bol thei big lo min nop thei big lo ni tika kan khle apoi mo chu wangin helai documentary proof kha karan sei lang ani tuna kan soi chho charchara abula tanga top thanga karan sei tumachu 1875 atang khan chho charchara 1933 theng khan Mizoram boundary Mizoram ri Assam ne kan ri na an draw don hian Mizo te hi ron kan ni lo pakhatna 1875 a ron tlak anam lo mai thei kan pile pute 1933 a po ron tlak anam lo mai thei kan la noi deu hlak mai thei political awareness alom lava khatiang kaimani mishing shim khosa jia kha ala niam amaro chu heng map and draw to Assam atanga district council atanga 1971 kan chwa don khan ero chuan Mizo te kha rotla kanom vetoni tin kan district council hoi tu te pon khumi zo phai bor vela kwan inner line chungchang he ala jok se boy veto thinani amaro chu vandwe thak do men Mizo district council po khan India sarkar ne na anjuk zia khan helai Assam boundary chung chang se fel ngai ni anti khan India sarkar khan 1933 base lo chuan an veta chu Assam khan 1933 base in an kalpui ta chara chuan kan khia tur chu 1986 MNF hovin peace accord and sign khan 1986 and sign khan I anron ring a hi kan thrafu lo ni na langa mitam tak chuan politics in beina te mo nin omangai thein MNF hovin Mizoram an thal kan thina MNF hin Mizoram an thal lawa anti pungbok lo ti kha ka seidonia 1966 an chuapo khan imaginary line chune ma na an chiang chuang vak lawa chuan kumsom ni nuan ron lule po khan 1986 peace accord and sign khan an Ramri ron pomachu 1971 northeast areas reorganization act thau khan pomani chuan enge 1971 kan ti chuan 1971 to 1952 Mizo District Council aringa 1952 Mizo District Council chuan 1933 Mizoram border ni omangai kha aringa ni okay chutiani chuan 1933 kan ramakha MNF ho chuan an ring ta thoti na ne chuwan akara kan ram thak omno wangin MNF ho hen ti sola nation lo ti ka sei duani chuwangin Mizo te khan atlang pui thina sarkar angine mo ami puyangine mo ti sol kan nei vaklo omje zoga chuan kan ram kan na chiang lova kan kher lawin ati thei tu ten Assam sarkar ina mo Survey of India mila road straw structure tu ne ro chuan kan ram khoi tu tele mi puiter lo om tu chu kan ram boundary kan threwe du to adik takini drong ko khai tingai tani.
Today, the Assam government had claimed that a bigger chunk of the ILR forest area, say 289 square miles, had already been somehow snatched away, which otherwise would have been very much an integral part of Mizoram, leaving in the process a much smaller portion, say 220 square miles of the original 509 square miles only with Mizoram. This act was shielded hurriedly by drawing a brand new inner line while deleting the original inner line from Kachar via the 1933 notification, which Assam side had been insisting all throughout these years that the interstate boundary between Assam and Mizoram be based on this 1933 notification. So now let's quickly talk about the changing boundary lines of Mizoram. As stated earlier, on the basis of the Memorandum of Understanding made between the British India government and the Mizo chiefs in the year 1872, the Bengal Eastern Frontiers Regulation Act was formulated the year after, that is 1873, and finally notified in a government official gazette in 1875 accordingly. Proper boundary marks were also made accordingly as per this notification. However, the British India government notification 1875 had actually been neglected and kept on changing. In fact, pushing deeper and deeper inside the Lushai territory, present Mizoram, simply to suit their commercial interest in the form of tea industry at that time. Finally, the Britishers had, in the year 1933, once again pushed the boundary limit of the ILR forest further inside the Lushai territory. It is important here to note that the fact that there was no more inner line of the ILR forest in the Kachar site, as was made in the beginning of the creation of this 509 square miles, which actually formed a northern boundary between Kachar and Lushai Hills territory of Assam, now known as Kachar and Mizoram. Then there was a new line inside Mizoram, which was supposed to be the outer line for Assam, which is now considered accordingly as the inner line for Mizoram. Hence, it may be noted by all concerned that the inner line nor the outer line of the inner line reserve forest originally within the territory of Mizoram is not to be considered as an interstate boundary between Assam and Mizoram, and that of the interstate boundary forest from the northern side of Mizoram. That fact, however, is that during the last leg of the British India period, that is starting from 1930 to 33, both the inner line and outer of the so-called inner line reserved forest, as could be taken from both Kachar and Mizoram side, were actually shifting more often so in order to confuse the underdeveloped Mizos about their own inner line of the ILR forest and the northern state boundary with Assam. Nevertheless, an area containing both the inner and outer lines has to be marked, and as such in the process, we are having a new defined boundary of the inner line reserve forest based on the 1933 notification, which has been continuing till today. Thus, it has been obvious that the boundary lines of the inner vis-a-vis outer lines of the inner line reserve forest area has been changing, but not the Kachar-Mizoram boundary of 1875. The fact has been that in the long history of the Mizoram-Assam border row, other than Lushai territory as defined, here also there was no marking on ground, no erection of pillar posts based on the 1933 notification, so it was made to be the Mizo District Council territory under Assam, and the same area has been upgraded to the area of Union Territory of Mizoram under the Northeast Areas Reorganization Act 1971, and thereafter to the present state of Mizoram under the Mizoram State Act 1986, and accordingly imposed upon the Mizos that this is their northern boundary. Now let's talk about the status of so-called constitutional boundary. As stated earlier, boundary of Mizoram Union Territory was made under the Northeastern Areas Reorganization Act 1971, and thereafter the same was used for the area of the state of Mizoram under the Mizoram State Act 1986. As such, the so-called constitutional boundary is actually an area that was of the Lushai Hills District, later on Mizo District Council in 1952, then the Mizoram Union Territory in 1972, and again made the area of the 23rd State of Indian Union, the state of Mizoram in 1987 until date. Now, it is highly pertinent to say that the Mizoram government or the Mizos in general have no idea about the exact nature and boundary of our Mizoram in 1933, nor the present boundary of 2020, especially of the boundary line between Mizoram and Assam.
1933 baseball han lo draw ta sala kateni chu Northeast Areas Reorganization Act 1971 po han lo ring ta sala 509 square miles sakha in the line reserve from Mizo te ta ni ti tu man an la doubt lo an la sei boi lo chu tian ni si chuan tu na kan 1933 bin pek le plus 509 square miles sakha Mizoram hen kan nei thei si chuan ka seng khan engwang 1875 ti te lunglen thak zonga kan not sam le mang kan du chu kan tuina chu kum ni lewin ramani ta ne ram zau zong chu wan tu na hian kemarel rule vinakaran se tu ma chuan 1933 hi lo ring ta po nei la 509 a 289 tu na asama o mekhu kan ta ni ti kha kan chianga chu kan nei ve ngai kan se fel po ngai approve kan nei thokata ni ti kha ka soi duwa ta tak chuan ni je thak do main kan se fo kha inner line hi kan se outer line hi kan se ve ngai vak lo ni ta hian helai me pa hian anila hei hi 83D11 ani ya to posit 83D11 ani ya heta hi chuan 1971 72 and drawn in 2000 hey hi 1990 91 draw tharle ani ya tiani 204005 an update chumi chungpo chuan chenaka soi D8 2023 83 D8 lawang takhan toposit dang panga kha chuan 1970 le 71 an ziang footnote khalom thapa ta point kan she dan tur kan dilang lokanga a footnote here the state boundary between Assam and Mizoram states shown in the sheet as in conformity with the relevant gazette notification issued by the government of Assam atene len Assam chuan an Ramri turakha gazette chuina lo draw verngot meni an lo siam verngot meni kha gazette an chuakha angkha Mizoram kan la chua velawa chu wagin atira tangoran selan fo kha Assam chuan gazette me chuin unconstitutional boundary anti kha amin lo draw sakto ramin lo ruk sakto ni te kha kan sei dhuni ta tak chuan khami min pom ti ra khan I kan hriat tur chu an draw swal jela ground verification anti lo jia tilang tu a chuan sei hapui ti te phaisen ti te khang ho kha Assam min da sakvek zo kho kha chu wangin an rin draw ni table atangin an draw ground and verify lo ti kha chiang ta ni heta hi chuan hemi 83D11 hi chuan hi 2004-5 an update nia ta hi chuan in but gazette notification issued by government of Assam mati Assam and pom toti nania but have yet to be verified by the governments concerned at Mizoram in ala verified veloni chu vai Mizoram verified ve si lo khan Assam khan intinge constitutional boundary ne thinking gazette an chwa verngot ti kha ngai tuan om tani min pal zulu tukani ti kha achiang ta chuanin inner line le outer line han kan soi kai lo kanga inner line om chuan outer line om turni map kha kan en chuan hela khan a hring om an hela hen hey hring dot hring kaloma hey hi inner line reserve forest and inner line Mizoram atang kan inner line chu hey hi ni ta ni ethical hi Mizoram lama tang kan inner line hisab chuan bill kho thlir te po khumi rangai ni reng ta kon an ti thanglo ka khon he line hi akal ta ni chu inner line reserve inner line anita kan khet angin inner line reserve area le interstate boundary khadangani chu hela hian heta ingen inner line reserve area oma achung zok a inner zok Mizoram hnai zok chu heta reng ta kon bula akal tlanga ten akal to dea maro chai inner line kan ti a khoi outer line ti chu kan hrengai lo ni he map hi banai thak takin hei survey of india reng kan cha thlenga he map ina hema betanga lukta kan en chuan tuna kan ron soi thok to ang khan inner line reserve forest an kan inner line ve Mizoram heta reng ta kon an ron rin dei to kha inner line lo ni sela chuan chu inner line chuan khoi nge outer line ti kha kan theda ngai ta ne inner line chuan outer line nei tur ani ya chu vain an outer line chu he survey of india map he na lo lang ta ne he lai hian a hring dot a hring om hi inner line Mizoram inner line reserve forest a chung lampang a line chung lampang ni ta apon lampang ro chu ka setong khan he lai hian oma ten kalkol so zela he ta kalta he ta han kalta ni tin khami inner line kan ti de outer line a kara khan Mizoram ri hi om ta ni ta hen state boundary hi helam pangzong kha Assam ani ta ni kachar ti te hailagandi borvel ni ta chu bagi 509 kha atira tanga kanram alani ngar chungsia hilaya Mizoram boundary nei kha afutalawni chu bagi hemi outer line of Mizoram atir bera 1875 kachar atanga anon te inner line khan ron son chhozel ti nani chu he inner line 509 alani reng lai khan hei hi kan ram turani ti kha cheng te emani chu wangin helaya hian I inge kan tiang an map and draw internal kati constitutional boundary ti min draw sakhi pomchi ni taloni chu wangin helai borvel zangale pakwa zani somni pakwa Mizoram an lo da to ringot chu ta po zani somret panga Assam an da ka kan ta ni ti kha kan chu ve kan ti pomaya chu wangin apoi mo bera chuan a base year kha 1875 ani amo 1930 amo 37 amo 2020 engpon no se tuna north east kan map and draw bera hich ko khet chu north east areas reorganization act 1971 base draw vekania amaro kan se tong khan opposite pakhat di e ta khan anlo manipulate jaba yet verified ti kha verified to ni om taken je ka dangai ro chun alom thapa he map hi kan se tong khan 83D11 ania 83D11 apo hian Mizoram sarkar in ala verified veloti azia kan ti kha kan share poi mo tani chu wangin helai borvela hian voinia kan share chen tak tur bera chu Assam chuan Mizoram na boundary problem kan nei lova tian save charchara kha anfina chan chu 289 square miles hi min nei sak andu wangani te chianga kening kan hrethiam thara tuna kan hrethiam chokzela tun ma khan 1875 atanga 1933 kha khen khan lo draw in andu thu samin lo draw thin ma sala min ron lo kan ti pokha ron tlak kan lam lo pon me thei amaro chu tuna chuan kan ron tlak ve to kan hrethiam ve to ti kha Assam kan hre ti rangai tani chu wangin helaya tak hianin I kan ram khoi tu ten hre tur chu Assamin boundary tian rong ko veringot constitution boundary ka no it is not a constitutional boundary kening kan la pompui ve lo chu not yet verified ania ka verified lang u khaitin kan lu oina tur tak ngai tu khan Assam sarkar kan dor huna po khan ke manin homework kan te felanga khoilai chin hinge kan chu value dona tin ni zanla ma te po tv te kan huwa churai kan ti hote sang khol hote inner line reserve om ve phasilo khulai silat lama tanga ngai ne man lai british silat lai tanga om tuna karimganj om ho mizo diktak Mizoram ron lin lu ve du man oma akhan pain an mani kha 180 square miles kha kan rin lut thailo na to chan to ka chong lo kai chonin constitutional measuring article 3 amo article 121 mangena mo kan la rin lut thei tur ngaila ani lo pon hemi 289 asami kan chu sak don hian kan du chuan heta 189 sang khol churai ti ho vel na pokhan an thleng theini tikha kan soi duwa chuwain Mizoram ngai ne future hi bright ha kan sarkar mo tu party po sarkar sela apoi mo berchu hoi takin Assam nen Assam le Mizoram hianin official boundary mo constitutional boundary mumal kan nei lawa chu wangin Assam hian an du thalin kan ramen ron lut vairengte amo sei hapuya in police outpost da nahi asama in lu ne anti thailo ni ti kan hriat angai chu wangin apoi mo ber chu interstate boundary se fel tru chuan Mizoram chief minister le Assam chief minister amo sarkar ve te kha central sarkar Indian government noya man mo ta kan che ta ngaya sang khal zakwa somret priya da sarkarin kan soidun se fel dun kan tum to chumi nuwa sang khal zakwa sumko pali chief secretary level in soile to chumi an thupa sa chuan CM level in soini ro se antia CM level khan soela ni lo ta charchara kum zani ta chu kum som ni le paruk mo kum som ni le paruk deuh tho kan ngoi le to ni chu wangin Mizoram sarkar big takin tuna pan chief minister amo kan sarkar hianin Assam ne na amo Ministry of Home Affairs ne na helai rami kan tifel du to ani no me once and for all tin kan se fel du to tin anor ve ngai we cannot sleep here mo tan kan mu the to lowa chu wangin voinia kan se fe du mizo unautena mi khet puitura ka du chu tun hi helai ram kan chu hian 509 kan sai hian Assam ram kan chu lowa atira pathien na ram kan pile pute apek ram apek nge kha alania chu wangin kan lo enkol ve to nge kan ramani kha kachar forest na enkol kha atul to lo he kanin tifel ve thokhat to state puiling kan ina pori to etin kan chu turani ti kha kan soi to chu wangin voinia tang chuan kan cha du ber chu mi puite chu kan chiang tun chuma kan boina po hian alan dan taka chuan mi puite hian sarkar kan khal nina langa chuan sarkar hian proactive role la sela ma la sela Assam bereng sela mo chumi ani lo chuan kan mut hil le chuan helai vela minti boitu te kha kan soyangin Assamese kan ti tak tak ho ani lawa Bangladesh atanga illegal immigrants Muslim immigrants ho helai Assam atanga no chu mail lausi ho khan Mizoram borvel poras tu tangna lo ho kha miro not chini ti khet turni chu wain kan do tak tak te hi Assam sarkar angin langma sela Brahmaputra Valley like Barak Valley here dam kan ti ka se fortune kha this puratang chuan kachara helai moini alang reng khop an tuilu tuklo mai thei atui zo le phus ho zo ka chu Bangladesh atanga lon lud ho Mizoram ron se tum ho khani ti she da poimo chu wai voinia kan thai ho te hi luk ta ka ngai to zom chuan kan ram hian he boundary kan se fel thei don ni langa engma har sadnom lo a documents kan nei thatok ti ngani invest lu kan nei thatok ti kha kan sei du ni chu wangin hei hi kan khe thiama pui lama tangte le sokha lama tangte ti ngaya interstate boundary chu NGO ngamo mi malanga sei fel chi ni lawa sarkar le sarkar state sarkar le sarkar bekna angaya wangin helai kan sarkar rethem chuan alam mutang.
Let me break down into points. Number 1, Mizos in general since time immemorial had accepted that there has been truly one demarcation between Assam and Mizoram, that is the one drawn, defined and notified by the British India in 1875. Point number 2, the so-called 1933 boundary between Assam and Mizoram has not been actually demarcated, nor proper boundary posts, pillar erected, and as such it was too much a hush-hush project made by the outgoing British India regime and a sort of too much overpowering and pushing towards the inner Mizoram than Lushai Hills of Assam. As such, it was too much of a temporary imaginary line drawn to satisfy the economic needs of the British tea planters, so it has been difficult to accept the same by Mizoram. How to finally solve the problem? When we have come to know exactly the what and the why of our interstate boundary tussle, any sincere effort in the true spirit of arriving at a permanent solution is guaranteed from a nearby pond. Sincere attempts to solve this problem once and for all by dismantling all the pillars in our calculation and counterclaims by both the sides be made first by the two state governments of Assam and Mizoram, taking into account the historical facts and the subsequent circumstantial events that had taken place under the long period of emerging situations in these disputed areas. There must also be a true brotherhood, actually that of a mother and a daughter relationship spirit at all levels, at any cost, at any time. The boundary lines drawn as per 1875 notification as well as that of 1933 notification must be studied and understood well, and the circumstances under which such changes were made either in the interstate boundaries as well as in redefining of the boundaries of the so-called inner line reserve forest from 1878 till today. Now, lastly, I'm going to make a public appeal to all concerned, such as India Union, Assam and Mizoram. Apart from the two state governments of Assam and Mizoram, the Union government of India is required to take a truly deep interest in the right honors to finally settle a border disputes of her two states of the Indian Union. One in the spirit of a mother, Assam, and a daughter, Mizoram. If all concerned governments are ready to make extra steps to inculcate a sense of beloved son, Mizoram has been, in spite of all hurdles, have been taking up an independent job as a new independent identity. Further, the Union Government of India as a mediator needs to take into account of the remote possibility of the hyperactive modern generations of Mizo youth.
मिजोरम के साथ बहुत ही गलत हुआ। हर समस्या का हल जो है अवश्य होता है, पर समय के रहते समस्या का हल न किया जाए तो क्या होता है, समस्या जो है जटिल बन जाता है। और यही स्थिति जो है पूर्वोत्तर क्षेत्र की भी हो गई है, लेकिन इतना भी देर नहीं कि समस्या का हल ना किया जा सके। केंद्र सरकार ने जो दूरदर्शिता पहले नहीं दिखाई थी, उसका नतीजा आज पूर्वोत्तर क्षेत्र के असम के पड़ोसी राज्यों को भुगतना पड़ रहा है। पूर्वोत्तर क्षेत्र के जनजातीय इलाके अब तक क्या है ठीक तरीके से या उचित रूप से सीमांकित नहीं है, और जाहिर है कि असम ही इन तमाम विवादों का केंद्र और कारण भी है, क्योंकि आजादी के बाद उनके वर्तमान के पड़ोसी राज्य जो है उससे ही अलग होकर के ही बने हैं। असम जिस संवैधानिक सीमा की बात का दावा करके क्या है उसके पालन का वकालत करते आ रहा है, वह सच्चे रूप में है ही नहीं। हमारे पास इस विवाद के क्षेत्र पर अपने हक और दावे को साबित करने के लिए पर्याप्त दस्तावेजी प्रमाण मौजूद हैं। मिजो जन का केंद्र सरकार से अपील। अंत में हम केंद्र सरकार से अपील करते हैं कि अपने इन दो राज्यों के बीच हो रहे सीमा विवाद को सुलझाने में हमारी सहायता वे करें। केंद्र सरकार का हस्तक्षेप जो है अत्यंत ही महत्वपूर्ण हो गया है, आवश्यक हो गया है। दोनों राज्यों के साथ बैठक में वे विचार करें और केंद्र सरकार इस भ्रम में ना रहे कि पूर्वोत्तर क्षेत्रों की सीमाओं का निर्धारण जो है सही तरीके से सुलझाया गया है। मिजोरम के 509 वर्ग मील के क्षेत्र को असम जो है हड़पने की लगातार कोशिश कर रहा है, जो बहुत ही गलत है। हमें अपने अधिकार से वंचित किया जाने का महसूस जो है मन को घिरने लगा है। इसीलिए हम केंद्र सरकार से विनती करते हैं कि उन तमाम रिकॉर्ड्स एवं ऐतिहासिक सीमाओं के सही आधार पर जांच पड़ताल एवं अध्ययन करें और क्या है जितना जल्द हो सके कृपया करके दोनों राज्यों के बीच का वास्तविक और स्थायी रूप से सीमांकन निर्धारण करने में कष्ट उठाएं। हमें बहुत खुशी होगी अगर ऐसा हो पाया तो, ताकि दोनों राज्यों के बीच का यह सीमा विवाद जो है सुलझ करके हमेशा हमेशा के लिए समाप्त हो सके। समापन के लिए मैं पूरे भारतवासियों से कहना चाहूंगी कि देश में भाईचारे की भावना जो है हमेशा बनी रहे और आप सब स्वस्थ और सुरक्षित रहें। गॉड ब्लेस यू। धन्यवाद। जिंदाबाद मिजोरम। जय हिंद।